Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Find Out What's in Pelenta's Forest. We have a really cool show lined up for you tonight. We're going to be talking about Dolly, the clone sheep. So grab yourself a glass of water or a cup of tea and spend the next few minutes with me. And like I always tell you, don't believe everything you hear. Check your facts and do your own research. Please. Don't you want to know what my butterflies are saying? Don't you want to know what my butterflies are talking? This is Find Out What's in Pelenta's Forest. Anyway, welcome to Find Out What's in Pelenta's Forest. Tonight we are going to be talking about Dolly, the clone sheep. And I'm really excited about this, so I'm just going to get right to it because last night we talked about the designer babies and I happened to come across this article and it just fell right in line. So, I really want to talk about this because you're getting cloned in your sleep. They're snatching you, your doppelganger too. Did you know? Ooh, you are getting cloned. You are being cloned. Do you think you're being cloned? You are a clone. Sheeple are being cloned. Anyway, I came across this article. Dolly the sheep. Do you remember 20 years ago when we cloned that sheep? Well, this article, the headline read, Dolly died young, but her clones seemed healthy at 9. So, Dolly, even though she is in sheep heaven, she has left behind a legacy. And I have followed this story, but apparently I did not follow it as thoroughly as I thought because I did not know she left some sheeple behind. So check this out. And I'm going to go through every inch of this story. And it's going to take a minute. So let's get started because I know you don't have all night. So thank you for watching and thank you for listening, but you're going to enjoy this, okay? Dolly died young, but her clones seemed healthy at 9. When Dolly the sheep was born 20 years ago, the University of Edinburgh's famous girl was the first mammal created by way of true cloning. Her embryo was created not using sex or stem cells of another sheep, but from mature cells taken straight from the donor's mammary tissue. Now, if you are wondering what mammary tissue is, I'm going to tell you. Now, if you want to sound smart and complicated, the mammary gland is an exocrine gland in mammals that produces milk. Now, all of the milk secreting tissue leads to a single lactiferous duct called a simple mammary gland. Okay? Now, if you want to keep it simple, then we'll just say the mammary tissue is any of the milk producing glands in female mammals. All right? Moving on. Dolly developed osteoarthritis and she died at the age of 6. And she was riddled with joint and lung problems reminiscent of old age. Now, when researchers examined the length of her telomerase structures at the end of DNA that shorten with each replication, creating cells with shorter telomeres as the body ages, they found that her biological age surpassed her chronological age. Her cells looked as if they'd been ticking longer than she'd been alive. Now, these are the effects of the cloning, okay? Some worried that this meant clones would age prematurely, carrying the same biological clock as the adult cells they'd been created from. All right? So from a biomedical standpoint, this would spell disaster with any tissue or organs created from the cells of healthy adults running on a shortened biological clock. But according to research published in Nature Communications, Dolly's premature aging isn't likely to extend to all clones or tissues. And it won't extend to the adult cells either. In fact, 4 sheep clones formed from the same cell line as Dolly seem to be in perfect health and are now pushing 9 years of age. Did you hear that? 9 years of age. So listen, Dolly was born 20 years ago. She died at age 6. The 4 clones that were left behind are now pushing 9 years old. So that means that in 2007, they had to have taken the other clones out of a deep freezer in a lab somewhere and birthed those suckers because they were born in 2007, you know? So now here we have 4 clones that we took out of a deep freeze and just birthed those, and now they're 9 years old. So you see what we're doing in labs now? And it gets better. Now, when we did the study, these clones were already 2.5 years older than Dolly was when she died. Now, the lead study author, Kevin Sinclair of University of Nottingham, said that they appear to be perfectly healthy, but we want to see if they might be harboring subtle defects. Now, Sinclair and his colleagues failed to measure the telomere lengths of these dollies. That's what they're calling them, the dollies. And another 9 cloned sheep from other cell lines that they studied along with them. So if I'm understanding that correctly, there are another set of 9 dollies in another lab somewhere. And they're going to investigate the molecular aging in about a year when the sheep, which will then have reached the truly impressive sheep age of 10, which is a milestone rarely seen in farm animals that are humanely put down. First of all, I would like to know what they mean by humanely put down, because you've seen them videos how they electrocute them in the cage and all that stuff. So I'd like to know what their idea of humanely put down is. And when they say that that the sheep age is a milestone rarely seen in farm animals, well, is it seen in clone animals? I mean, what else, what else are they hiding? And it says, but the research team did undertake the most comprehensive study of physical aging ever in cloned animals, other than mice, according to Sinclair, by looking for signs of non-communicable diseases, including obesity, hypertension, and osteoarthritis. So if you're listening to me carefully, obviously there are way more cloned animals on the planet that we actually know about. Now here it says they found some signs of very early osteoarthritis in sheep, but none showed symptoms over 3 years after the genetic identical had. So now, a year later, one sheep is starting to exhibit signs of stiffness. But given their age, Sinclair said it wouldn't be unusual for one sheep out of 4 to have arthritis. But the 4 were completely cleared of all other health issues. But see, that's already a little iffy, because if all 4 came from the same petri dish, per se, then they should basically be identical. If they're the same, they should be identical, right? They shouldn't have anything. If one has osteoarthritis, then you would think that they all should. And if not, they got to figure it out. And basically, that's what they're doing. But it was quite obvious that the concerns of Dolly just didn't relate, Sinclair said. So you can't extend beyond the Dolly experience and say this premature aging applies to all clones. So that just knocked out what I just said. But some studies have found shorter telomere length in clones than in naturally born animals. But even more have found no difference based on the physical evidence. Now, that is kind of creepy, because that is almost saying that there is no obvious difference. Here I go, which leads me to talk about the movie Blade Runner. Remember when Harrison Ford... I know you guys think I'm totally insane, but remember though, when Harrison Ford was interviewing, I think it was Sean Young, and she was smoking a cigarette, and he was asking her all those questions, I guess to kind of see if she was going to pass the human test. And remember, she passed every single question until he got to, was it the question about the dog? And that's when she got stuck, like 1,000 questions later or something like that. So, that's tricky, you guys. You see where we're going? You better be paying attention to this madness. So Sinclair and his colleagues expect to find normal telomere lengths when they study Dolly's clones next year, confirming that their cells have aged properly, giving the lifespans that they've had. So why was Dolly so decrepit? Why was she so decrepit? Because technically speaking, she should not have died at 6. And she should not have had all those problems. But scientists aren't positive. But it may come down to the very methods with which the cloned embryos are cultured and implanted. Now, the enzyme that causes the telomeres to elongate is abundant in a healthy, normal embryo, but a slow or inefficient implantation process might interrupt this, causing embryos to develop with old cells instead of new ones that totally reset. Did you hear that? The cells will totally reset. Now, it's a question worth going back and visiting, Sinclair said. But the new studies suggest that it's possible to completely reprogram an adult cell. Now, see, we just talked about designer babies. And what did I tell you guys last night? The whole thing with the designer babies is, with the embryo and the implantation, you could go in there just like a recipe, making a loaf of bread, and input the ingredients and the information you want. And out comes your perfect baby cake. Exactly. I'm going to read that again. But the new studies suggest that it is possible to completely reprogram an adult cell, which would mean There's hope for greater batches of healthy stem cells formed without embryos in the future. Now remember episode 11 when I talked about that goat face baby kid in Malaysia? Remember, it was born without an umbilical cord. Now, what are the odds that they were doing experiments on that goat on that farm in Malaysia? Because that whole story does not make any sense at all. But being born like that with no umbilical cord? So how was it even being fed? Because the umbilical cord and the placenta gives you all the food and everything that you need. So how was that even possible? It makes no sense. And it wasn't even stillborn. It was born alive. It was born alive. And it lived for several, I don't know, maybe 7 or 10 minutes. But the fact of the matter is, it was born alive. And it survived for a period of time. So that's just weird. But anyway, so-called pluripotent stem cells are created by reprogramming cells from living humans. You see? And you force them back to the pseudo-embryonic state, just as Dolly's parent cells once were, where they can grow and change into cell types that suit therapeutic purposes. You know, and then that way they can be used to provide medical treatments that sometimes seem miraculous. Now, did you hear that? It can provide medical treatments that sometimes seem miraculous. And that is the operative word. They seem miraculous, but they're not. There's a darker picture going on here. They seem miraculous, helping stroke patients walk again, for example. But for now, taking stem cells straight from human embryos, cloned or otherwise. See, you have to pay attention to these words, the way they use the verbiage and where they place these words, because see, the placement of these words in these sentences is what gives the power and the definition and the true meaning behind the statement, okay? What is cloned or otherwise? That's just like the eagle has landed. One step for man and one step for mankind. What the hell does that mean? What kind of man are you talking about? Why not just say one step for man? What is mankind? A kind of man? And what kind of man are we talking about? A designer baby man or a clone Dolly sheep man? Yeah, exactly. So the obvious ethical debate, see, could be avoided if healthy, truly pliable cells were easier to create from adult source material. And this research suggests that such reprogramming is possible. Well, you know what? They're saying that such reprogramming is possible. Well, that's kind of true, and then it's not kind of true. Because they're saying that it's possible, they're doing it. They're doing it right now. They're doing this stuff. So don't say it's probably possible. I mean, such programming is possible. It is possible. They're doing it. It's not possible. They're doing it. You know, and the process is truly the greatest legacy of cloning. Well, of course it is. You know, and it says cloning was really the inspiration for this, like, Dolly, you know. And it says while other labs across the world are working on cloning now used to produce other farm animals such as cattle, and even available for grieving dog owners who want genetic copies of their lost pet to improve efficiency, Sinclair and his team won't be continuing Dolly's legacy for much longer. That's not true, because they just said right here that other labs across the world are working on cloning. So maybe they're not going to continue Dolly's legacy, but somebody else is going to continue Dolly's legacy. They're not going to just stop and just let that fall by the wayside. They just said that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, basically, you know. And then it says that these are the only dollies left. And, you know, that he said of the 4 sheep, and they're likely to be the last dollies. I don't believe that that is true. And also where he said that people want to clone, you know, their pets and things like that. Here we go again. Remember the movie, The Sixth Day, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, when they had Repet? What did they do when your pet died and you couldn't let go? You went and had your pet Repet, which in a sense is kind of terrible because, you know, when your pet dies, you are supposed to let go and move on. That is the whole thing about being a kid. When your parents get you a goldfish or a bird, because you know it's not going to live forever, and that is the way for a child to learn about death and letting go. You don't stuff your dead animals and keep them around. Then you'll never learn how to let go and move on and grow and prosper, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, this cloning and designer baby things, you guys, it's serious and it's real. Now, of course, it's fascinating and it's amazing. But the last thing I'm going to leave you with is when you clone your animals. First of all, your animal is dead. Okay, you can clone him all you want to, but that clone is not your animal. I don't care. Any way you slice it, your beloved Fluffy is dead. He is gone to animal heaven. That thing that you just paid $50,000 for in a lab, it might look like Fluffy, it might smell like Fluffy, but let me tell you something. That thing is not Fluffy. And now they want to get into cloning all these farm animals and stuff. Did you hear the article that I just read? How they're not living that long and they're getting osteoporosis. I mean, not osteoporosis, osteoarthritis and all these weird diseases and all that kind of stuff. Like I told you last night, you know, why do we need God? What do we need God for? We're making our own people now. You know, I mean, let's just take God out of everything. We don't need God. We can make our own people. You know, we can clone our own food. We can just do all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think science is great, but I also think in a way it's kind of scary and it's kind of a shame because you have the good scientists that really want to do the good stuff, and then you also have the Dr. Jekyll and the Dr. Frankenstein. So on that note, folks, I'm going to leave you with that. Get online and check out the cloning and the designer babies because it's really, 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 really interesting. I'm going to try to talk about the penis transplant on the next show. I want to do an update about that because like I told you before, our soldiers and our men and women that are serving this country, you know, Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran and the whole 9 yards, they are going through a lot over there. And unfortunately, one of the things that we are not talking about enough is pelvic injuries and, you know, in your private area, private parts, you know, getting blown off and chest injuries and things like that. So we have wonderful doctors out there that are able to, you know, help our soldiers with, you know, sexual pelvic injuries and things like that. So I'm going to do some studying about that and try to give you an update on the, you know, on the penis transplant and how that young man is doing. So anyway, folks, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching. Go to my website, PelentaForrest.com, and buy my book. And on that note, we are going to get out of here with my favorite tune. It is One Love. And as usual, I am so very grateful for everything, and I am grateful for you too. So y'all have a fabulous evening. Be good to each other. Have a wonderful week. Thank you for watching. Find out what's in Pelenta's crazy forest. God bless you all.